SDGs are very different from the Millennium Development Goals in the sense that the 2030 Agenda itself acknowledges the importance of data and statistics, not only for tracking progress on the SDGs, but as an issue that is important for sustainable development in itself. So contrary to the MDGs, the SDGs actually mandate improving statistical capacity in countries, and that's quite important because it allows countries not only to monitor and report, it allows people to hold their policymakers and government accountable to delivery on the sustainable development goals, but it also enables achieving the fundamental principle of the 2030 Agenda, which is to leave no one behind. In order to leave no one behind, we need to know exactly who is being left behind, why are they being left behind, and where they are. All of that are information points, data elements that would allow policymakers to better target their interventions to ensure that they deliver on their commitments to the people of the world, and they deliver the 2030 Agenda within the time frame that is allocated. So as I was saying, the MDGs were actually quite important in putting in raising the profile of data because it came with a set of indicators that needed to be tracked. And in that period from 2000, we realized that we actually did not have enough information to monitor progress on the MDGs. So there were a lot of progress achieved in the MDG period to actually be able to track those MDG indicators. Now, the difference with the SDGs is that the SDGs themselves include a specific target on improving statistical capacity. That was not a target for in the MDG days, which means that the SDGs acknowledge data as a development issue by itself. Capacities of the countries to actually produce the data and use the data is one of the areas where the SDGs require that we invest more resources to enable the countries to deliver on the specific target, improving the availability of data, the amount of data, the quality of the data, the frequency of the data. The other difference between the MDGs and the SDGs is that the data requirements to track the SDGs are orders of magnitude higher than the MDGs. In MDG days, we had about 44 indicators that needed to be tracked at country level. Now, with the Sustainable Development Goals, we're looking at currently, we're looking at a global indicator framework of 232 indicators. Now, that requires massive investment in improving statistical capacity to be able to track on all of these indicators. And that's a fundamental difference between the MDGs and the SDGs when it comes to the monitoring framework and the indicators. Well, there are many challenges that the countries are facing. One being, of course, the magnitude of the demand that the SDGs impose on statistical systems. There's not enough resources on statistics in many countries, and the resources sometimes are sporadic. The profile of statistics in many governments is not what it should be to meet the data requirements of the SDGs. And on top of it, there are a lot of gaps in terms of data availability in some key areas of sustainable development that need to be addressed nowadays. We see in our work significant gaps on populations, vulnerable populations, about which there's no data. There's significant groups of people on which we don't have enough data, or we don't have any data at all. One, for example, being the older population group. There's a huge limitation in data availability about older persons because many of the data collection instruments are actually limited at a certain age. They have an upper age limit, which means that on issues facing older women, for example, we don't have enough information to be able to take action. There's also a lot of challenges related to the capacities of government to use data effectively. Having enough data and good quality data that's producing the data. There are a lot of limitations there. As I just said, we have some gaps, but also the ability of governments to actually use the data. there's a lot of challenges in many instances where even when there is data, there is not enough capacity to actually use the data or the right tools to produce the analysis that's required to effectively make policy decisions with the data that's available is often lacking, and that requires also some investment in strengthening the capacities of governments, of policymakers to use these, the right tools and to use data effectively. Other challenges relate to the interaction between different parts of what I would call data ecosystems, or the statistical systems at national level. You see that with the amount of data that the SDG require, with 232 indicators and very limited capacities in statistical capacity at national level, it would be quite impossible, I would say, for any single institution to produce all the data that is required. It would need to improve the mechanisms of collaboration, of cooperation, of exchanging information, of sharing data in order to be able to tap into the multiple abilities and resources that exist. And that means that we have to not only invest in official statistical capacity, but we also have to look at the opportunities that exist outside of official statistical systems. There is nowadays, with what is called the data revolution, a lot of potentially new and useful data sources that are out there, and we need to explore how those data sources, whether it's social media, whether it's mobile telephony information, whether it's satellite imagery, all these new sources of data, how they can complement data that is produced by official statistical system to help monitor and achieve the SDGs. And those imply a very different set of challenges of getting data that is produced through different means, different methodologies, different periodicities to work together seamlessly to address the Sustainable Development Goals. So starting tomorrow, the Philippine Statistics Authority is hosting an international conference on the Sustainable Development Goal statistics. And the expectation from that event is that we would actually start bringing together the statistical community to explore these challenges and discuss possible solutions, how they can be addressed together. I have to say that one interesting feature is that this knowledge exchange platform, which is organized by UNDP, just before is actually a tremendous opportunity to bring together the communities of policymakers, development practitioners, who are here for the knowledge exchange conference, with the statistical community, because they have to work together. And we need more avenues of these two communities working together to make sure that the development practitioners understand what data can do for them, particularly to address some of those intractable issues of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals with all the complexity that goes with it, to discussing accelerators, identifying those areas of intervention where you can have multiple dividends across a large number of targets. What kind of data do we need to be able to identify those accelerators and actually accelerate development progress? Those are the kind of questions that the policymakers who are here for this knowledge sharing conference on the SDGs are asking themselves, and I think that they need to have that conversations with the statistical community who is also here. They're also here, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity for them to understand the needs of development and what they can do to help advance those needs in an accelerated manner. At the International Conference on SDG Statistics, we will be discussing issues pertaining, for example, to the new capacity requirements that are needed to support implementation of the 2030 agenda. We'll also be discussing how to strengthen national statistical system, which is quite an important topic nowadays. We'll be discussing how to count the uncounted, how to make sure that with the data that's produced, we actually make sure that the 2030 agenda leaves no one behind, which is an important principle of the new development framework work. So it is quite opportune that we have these two events happening concurrently, and I do expect that coming out of these two events at the end of the week, participants, we will go back with a better understanding of how we can work together as development practitioners, as data stakeholders, as statisticians, to ensure that the data revolution actually helps achieve accelerated progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So UNDP is actually a major player in supporting the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Over the past couple of years in UNDP, we have provided integrated support on SDG implementation at national level. One of the key features of the support that UNDP has been providing to countries is to integrate in that integrated approach, to make sure that in that integrated approach we take into account the needs for statistical capacity building. And that has been a systematic feature of the support provided by UNDP at country office. Now, that support builds on some of the work that we did over the past couple of years to understand the nature of data ecosystems at national level, to understand who the players are in that data ecosystem, how they relate to one another, what could be the incentives for the different data stakeholders at national level to work together to share their data, and what are the opportunities that exist at national level to take advantage of innovative data sources, innovative data approaches, and also explore a little bit what the legislative frameworks, the enabling environments for taking full advantage of the data revolution is. Now, the findings from those assessments of data ecosystems at national level have actually informed now the production of guidance that we are providing to our colleagues at national level in country offices on how to leverage data to support implementation of the SDGs. So there's a number of recommendations and guidance on concretely how UNDP at national level can respond to government's request of support on statistical capacity. We are doing some work at the moment on redefining what the statistical capacity requirements for the data revolution for sustainable development could be, going beyond capacity for official statistics. We would like to explore what sort of capacity non-official data stakeholders might need to contribute to the achievement of the SDGs. We would like to explore what sort of capacities non-statisticians might need to be able to effectively use data for their development work. Those are areas where so far there's been little investment. Most of the focus has been on strengthening what I would call the production side of statistics, and not enough on the use side, so the demand side of statistics. And we need to explore what sort of capacities we need in those areas as well. We are also in UNDP trying to advance the Leave No One Behind agenda, and that's a fundamental strategic priority for UNDP. It's been for quite a while to focus on the most vulnerable, the disadvantaged, the poorest, and we are now working with several partners to explore how we can assist countries in improving statistical capacity about older persons, that older generations, which is growing in number. The number of people 60 and older is expected to double in the next 30 years in the world, and in developing countries, including in Africa, which still has a sizable amount of young people, the huge majority of the population. The age group 60 and older is expected to triple actually in coming years, and we don't have enough information about that age range, about people in that age range. So we are going to be working with partners to improve data availability about older persons and to ensure that data is disaggregated enough across all age range to enable us to have more targeted policy interventions to ensure that we leave nobody behind in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.